Welcome to the Post-Work podcast recorded at Calmax Studios Bunker, somewhere hidden in Berlin. I'm Pablo Denegri, your host, and today's guest is street artist Jamie Paul Scanlon, or JPS. Jamie, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you as well.
Jamie, can you tell us your first contact with art?
Well, from very early age, I've been into art. Basically, my dad taught me to draw very young, and yeah, I spent most of my younger years drawing until.
I read that you learned from your father.
Yeah.
Was he an artist?
Only when he was in prison.
But there's a scene of prison artists, or?
Yeah, he was very talented, but troubled man, So, but one thing he passed on to me was, of talent for art. I believe it was kind of a natural talent, I guess, But I guess it also passed on over a few things.
I think it's something good to get from your father, like love for art. Either way, however the transmission comes, let's say.
Then there was kind of a big gap, when I was 20, when I was 20, I kind of slipped into the wrong path in life, and I just basically didn't pick up a pen or anything for like 12 years. I was just kind of in a different world. And when I was 32, I hate to admit it, but I seen a Banksy show, and it inspired me to kind of try and, change things, Like, I thought I could do that. It wasn't so much the concept, but the technique of being able to put big size things up was what appealed to me and set me on the road to like recovery, and was what I'd class as the proper birth of JPS would have been in 2010.
It's funny that you said that you hate to say that it was Banksy that kind of inspired you in this special moment because of what came later on, and we will talk about that.
It's a shame of the way it all
artistic, complicated relation you have with Banksy. So there was a huge gap in your contact or your use of art, let's say.
Yeah.
And then you came back, not with drawing, but with something that had to do more with
Yeah, to be honest, my confidence with drawing wasn't that great, at that point, because I was so rusty, I felt. And also, I'd also spent the most of my early life drawing. So I was kind of interested in this new technique, and I loved the fact that you could just, instead of having to put it in a gallery or hang it up somewhere, you could just ram it down people's throats, You could just go out and put it on the street. And enabled me to also to do characters in that I'm fans of, movie characters and all the sort of stuff. Yeah.
And in Wiston, where you're from, in Britain, in the United Kingdom, were you already involved in, there was some kind of street culture scene that you were part of? Let's say, I don't know, I was in a hip-hop gang when I was in high school, for example.
No, I'd love to say that was the case, but I was very much a lone soldier. And the early beginning, I was so poor when I started being JPS in 2010. I was buying like books from charity shops, army books or whatever, for 50p. And I had just an old scalpel blade.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a cutting mat or anything. I just used the pages and just try and practice and cut little stencils, and then I was spraying them with like a high pressure car spray paint. They were awful, my first ones. But
this is not the best spray for making stencils.
It's way too high pressured and that.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of got quite neat with it eventually, but luckily someone then showed me the paint I used ever since. I kind of it's only used the other paint for about 6 months, and then I learned what proper paint was, and I made enough money to buy some paint,
And this was after this Banksy show that inspired you.
Yeah, it really did plant a seed. My mate had been ranting. I didn't really know much about Banksy. I was really in a different world. But he's like, "Oh, you ought to see this Banksy guy. Come to Bristol. He's got a show at the museum." And I kind of went along, didn't really know what to expect, but it got handed to us. The best show I'd ever seen Banksy do, or they do.
This was 2005? No,
No, it's 2009, the show.
2009.
At Bristol Museum. And of course, I didn't walk out of there and go sober straight away. Things went downhill a bit further for nearly a year after. But at the same time, from that day, I started doing the earlier stencils. From even as soon as I got back, I made my first, well, not my first stencil, to be fair. I made them at college, you know what I mean? I made them years ago, but
Yeah.
that was when, and then I basically just, things just, it's long stories basically on the other part, but yeah.
Because you say you were in another world.
Yeah.
In which world
Well,
were you?
a criminal world, you know, like
Marginal.
junkies and just, yeah, just a very different world. And yeah. But in a way, it's all part of what created me, you know, all part of what created me as an artist. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of now considered art forms or culture forms that started in the streets are impregnated with this relationship with the marginal world of poor people, of junkies, of the underground in general. If you think about hip hop music, for example, or a lot of rock scenes. In most cases, the topic itself are about this marginal life in the streets, you know?
Yeah,
So I think it's part, or should be part in a way, of any art forms that comes from the streets, to consider this as part of the world, you know?
Yeah, I get you.
That's a problem when maybe a street artist doesn't have like a marginal background. So for the public opinion, it's not so attractive, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, your original question was about a crew, and to be fair, Weston didn't have much of an art scene. It didn't really have.
Was not Bristol.
No. The streets had practically no street art, you know, and I don't get recognised for bringing what I did to Weston. At least it feels like it from certain parts of the town, from the council and stuff.
You feel like you in Weston you made your contribution, so to say, in this regard.
Oh, massively. Even now, I've got 40 pieces around the town, you know, and there's a map and everything. But we obviously, relating to the Banksy subject, it relates to that why I feel kind of outed by outcast from my own town, you know, with the art. So.
But Banksy scene was Bristol, right? Your Weston is far away from there?
No, it's 25, 30-minute drive.
Ah, okay.
It's extremely close. Yeah. You know, so I've got a few pieces in Bristol as well.
So what happened? How was it that you started developing, let's say, your own style, but also your own territory in a way, because it was virgin territory in regards to street art and so on?
Yeah. I mean, only in the later years did I kind of get more familiar with big scene areas where street art goes a lot faster and stuff. But Weston, it was kind of easy to me, you know, because like I said, my background, I was involved in such a dark world that painting a nice piece on a wall to me is actually not a crime. It doesn't feel like a crime to me, you know, and I try to use my common sense on that, and my intent is to make people happy, you know. So I don't know. I kind of have my own kind of weird logic with what I do. Because
when you think about it, it was 50 years history of hip hop, for example, where in the 70s in New York, street graffiti was marginalized and totally persecuted and stigmatized in the public opinion.
Yeah.
And then Basquiat came along. It was integrated more into some more accepted aesthetics, artistic aesthetics, and so. but not for everyone, and it's still illegal in a way. So what's your take on that? How do you think this evolve, or what the state of things is regarding street art or graffiti as something that is technically legal? You know?
Yeah, it's a complex question. The trouble is with street art, and that people blur the lines, you know, from like this tattoo I have.
Yeah.
This tattoo is an
You
example.
can show to this camera. Yeah.
That is what I used to tag during a time when I was
Can I
antisocial.
see? What's your tag?
It was this. It was kind of like
Yeah.
a little symbol for our gang.
Your one-man gang.
No, it wasn't
Ah.
the one. This was before. This was
Okay.
This was back, because I know there's that 12-year gap, I say, where I didn't do art, and this is my point. I did tag things, you know. I was like, because when you're in abandoned buildings and you find an old spray can, then it's done its vandalism. Sometimes that's what I mean. It's always a grey line on intent to what it is, you know. And I do believe street art is becoming super acceptable, you know, when it comes to all
Too
that.
much, maybe,
I think it's too much.
to be comfortable about it.
Well, I think people lose interest in it. You know, you no longer get blown away so easily by street art. The bar gets higher, you know. That's how I see it.
Yes, yeah.
There's so many fantastic pieces already painted in the world, you know. To beat them, I struggle with trying to beat my own favourite piece of myself, you know.
Right. And the thing with anonymity has to do also traditionally with the fact that it's illegal to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But you sign your works.
Yeah.
Uh,
I know, and I've never caught a charge yet. And I don't, you know, I've painted illegally loads and loads and loads and loads of times, you know, loads. But basically, it's all about, police can't prosecute you generally. The owner has to want to prosecute you. They have to
the
be
owner
very...
of the building.
Yeah, whoever building you've hit or whatever, they have to want to prosecute you. In general, I mean, the police can try, but they usually get chucked out of court. But so I always try and do the nicest job I can, and I've just been lucky. I guess, you know, that I haven't hit someone's house or wall or...
But Black Rat, for example, he was like a pioneer stencil artist. And if I'm not wrong, he was also signing the works, or not?
I'm not so sure with
I'm not
Black.
sure if I saw in Leipzig, because now they are, of course, they are totally legitimized and integrated in art history, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get caught in the niche of just sticking to permission, but I still try to keep it real. Black, I don't know that much about him, if I'm honest. I tend not to study other artists so much because I don't like to be influenced too much, because otherwise everyone ends up painting monkeys and rats, and, you know, I try to think inside my own box kind of thing.
So you were influenced more by this gesture, so to say, of what implied working with stencil as
the
a
format,
form.
yeah.
But then you develop your own imaginary, you know, your own world of.
And the wordplay stuff I do, the jokes in that, yeah.
Right, and all these characters from TV shows. You know, video games, animations from the 80s and the 90s.
Lost childhood, son. That's what it was.
Is this a way to re-elaborate some things you were consuming as a kid, or
yeah, to be honest,
go back to this worldview when you were a kid and you were drawing?
I grew up on a rough estate, and my mum brought me and my brother up practically on her own. You know, our dad was around for a little bit, but she mostly brought us up on her own, and she kept us quite sheltered in a way on what was a dangerous estate, really, you know. And so we were allowed to watch any films we wanted, pretty much, you know. So, yeah, get home from school, and rather than go out and around causing trouble at a younger age at least, I'd watch all these movies, RoboCop and Freddy films and Jason films and all that. And then, of course, when I got sober, my memories went back to kind of like, it was like when I got clean off 12-year bender, it was like I was 17 again. And then, of course, then everyone's always like, why don't you do this film? It's like I was missing when that film was made. I didn't see that one because I don't like covering things I didn't see, you know. I don't just paint things for the sake of painting them. I generally paint things I like, you know.
Because it has definitely this nostalgia effect, even though most of them are playful and you use humor a lot. The icons itself, for someone that we were talking about this a trapdoor stop motion animation film, which was very rare to consume at the time, you know, and one definitely feels this nostalgia effect, you know, that causes kind of warmth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In this sense of maybe making a street environment that could be very normally or could be aggressive or dangerous, or it's something with this warmth from childhood, maybe, at least for some generation, right?
Yeah. The wordplay part's quite interesting that I do, you know, with the puns.
Yeah, right.
People often say
humor
that.
is a huge part also of your. Some are like memes even.
Yeah, some of this mixing word stuff, it comes from because a lot of my mates in school were dyslexic. They were rubbish with their spelling. And I actually used to flunk tests to stay back in school in the lower groups, to stay with my friends from my estate, rather than... I was smart enough to go in higher groups at school, but I stayed down. But it was from like the way they writ things and that I kind of learned this wordplay. And plus,
you will be surprised how many guests from this podcast were dyslexic. I think most of the guests were dyslexic. They were talking about dyslexia at some point.
I know, but some of them are really... The thing is, it's like dyslexia is strange because some of them are really smart as well. You know, it's not that much of a disability. But the good thing is I got to help them with their stuff, you know, but their wordplay, the way they sometimes wrote things, and that made me realize how much you can bend words and stuff, and I think it contributed.
And it works as an act of criticism in a way when you talk about power figures or police. So this is also part of street culture. Imaginary, right? Fuck the police, but I think humor is a nice tool to use in this direction.
Yeah, I mean, what would you rather see on a wall? Like a little starving African kid next to an oil can,
right?
Or something funny, like a big, colourful piece with a good joke. You know, I don't think that that type of work changes the world. I know that's kind of crazy. Most artists believe it, but I don't believe that a painting on a wall has much effect on what's going to happen in society. I mean, think of how many anti-Trump pieces were out before Trump got elected. They promoted him. That's how I see it.
Yeah, of course. They don't. I also made anti-Trump video art works. Yeah, I'm sure they definitely didn't
but it doesn't have an effect.
No. So not believing in it as a saving force also frees you up, maybe, to be more playful or to have fun while doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
And what about your commentary on your influence, or this first influence you had with Banksy, and how did it change your view of Banksy? Some of your works are direct commentaries on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate some of my part in this war. But it all started with this rat in 2011 I painted. And basically, I really should have seen that they were a collective from then, because that was the first time they ever denied a piece. They publicly denied for the first time ever that that piece, and it caused a lot of egg on people's faces on some forum or something. And just because I'd painted this fake piece, and it blew up into the national media.
Which was the one with the balloon? No.
It was called Paint to Escape.
Okay.
If you Google it, Paint to
It's
Escape.
not one of the ones here.
It's not one of those, no, sadly not. But that, in a way, was probably the start of this. And that was in 2011. And I was, the amount of hostile kind of people on this forum towards me, and that was kind of a little bit, whoa. But so then after then, and it was also annoying in the UK that if I did a piece in full colour, really good, it would get no media. If I do a black and white piece of a kid and just with a little message somewhere and not sign it, then you get loads of media, because then the PR contracts kick in for the Banksy crew, you know what I mean? But
right.
The trouble is, that's why, you know, people will say, oh, JPS backroad Banksy. The trouble is, they make it that way. You won't. They and later on, obviously, I realize how powerful they are, big time. Like,
didn't you ever meet someone you had in common with this Banksy collective, or were not like artist connections, or because one would think
it's been
one would be friends, you know, doing such similar works or being inspired by it, and
the whole Banksy thing's been like a puzzle. You know, I met people in New York that knew Banksy. I met people in Norway that knew Banksy. Well, not Banksy. Banksy is not one person. It was originally Robin Gunningham, but I could name
until that point it was true. Until that point, it was true there was one person, and you said then it's
it's all about money. It's big time. Every part the media say about Banksy is a lie. Everything is a lie. That's how it is. People can choose to believe it or not, but
I mean, it's a very, very well constructed story for the art world, you know?
Yeah.
The origins, the critical, the marginalized.
I think a lot of people are seeing through it as well, though, because it's, you know, at this point, we get articles, Banksy's bought a boat, Banksy's bought a mansion, Banksy's bought a pub. I didn't know you can just go and buy things anonymously, you know? You can't, you know? It's all rubbish. The only reason it's not the truth isn't out is PR contracts. And with the ability to move multiple falsely dated works through Sotheby's and that, and Phillips and Christie's, they've got like an unlimited resource of money. They're so powerful, it's unreal. You know, I tried to fight them, but I'm kind of screwed. You know what I mean?
Because what it works with Banksy as a construct from the perspective of the art world is this story. It seems like a project that is constructing actions to generate an effect in the art world.
Yeah.
Usually the effect is to put up in value their own works, you know, but everything they do in a way goes in this direction. That's why it's interesting also for people that studied art, you know, or think about what an artwork is, you know. And
I mean, I used to be impressed by his works, but once you know the truth behind it all, you just look at them completely different. It's strange. I just see absolute junk when I look at Banksy stuff, because I know the true story behind loads of it, and how many different artists created this body of work. It's
Right.
not one person. I was never battling one person. I've been battling about 10 people, you know.
And how many you think there are now?
I mean, I don't know the exact number that are in the pact, but between them, there is a certain unit that are all on the payroll on like an even level. If you look up their net worths, they're all kind of worth about 50 million each. You know what I mean? It gets all divided up into a pie between them, and that. It's a corporation. A corporation that's very, very ruthless and controls the art game, well, at least the urban art game, with a massively iron fist, you know what I mean?
And you,
If they decide you ain't going to make it, you ain't going to make it, no matter how talented you are.
you know firsthand that they actually not only not generate collaborations or let's say extend their hand to newcomers or other artists, but the contrary. You say they have a monopoly or they want to control this street art aesthetics
Yeah. It's
for their own business. So
the
to
level
say.
of greed is incredible. The level of greed is incredible. Yet the media have it that he rides around on a donkey throwing out money, and it's completely the opposite. It's a massive, At the moment, they've decided that everyone has to have a new COA, and every single time a Banksy print or artwork is resold through an auction house, they get artist resale rights. So it's a constant thing.
It's a money machine.
Yeah. Look up the Banksy Value website and stuff like that. It's just a complete monopoly.
It really burst the bubble, because the potence of Banksy was this idea that could operate from outside the system
Yeah.
to criticize the.
Oh no, he's fully in bed with them and doing all sorts.
That is because playing with such sensitive topics and so serious topics, about the effects of these corporation in terms of global. I come from a third world country, talking about global hunger and the situation in Gaza, for example.
Yeah.
Or in war regions, very sensitive and serious topics, where it seems that you should have a moral level to back up this criticism, with your own, and that's where maybe people need to think that Banksy is this kind of Robin Hood artist, Otherwise, it would really be. It's darker than Disney World. You know what I mean?
But that's the thing. It's all depressing. His work. Well, their work. It's just got very stale. That's how I see it.
And you have people in common, people that know Banksy and let you know how they operate. And
Yeah. I got whistleblowers, inside people. I know loads about them. This podcast would last ages if I told you everything I know.
I'm just surprised because one would hope that doing something, I come also from the electronic music scene and kind of experimental electronic music, but still finding someone who's into the same genre or was always something very exciting, to connect with, to do collabs and so on. This is what for me...
I could give a couple of mates shout-outs, actually. I know I was a lone soldier, but nowadays I've got some really good graffiti mates, writers and that as well. Actor One, so a good shout-out to Actor One. Kren, I guess heard of Kren?
I don't know if it was in this collective exhibition I saw with you.
Yeah.
Here last year.
Yeah. And Measy as well, Measy owners. So we all get to hang out and paint together, and I'm liking that. And it's also great to network with artists.
And this scene of artists you collaborate with are literally being kept out of this so major scene, this commercial scene, so to say.
They're not so much affected by it because they do writing in a kind of different style stuff. Because I do the stencils, and because of obviously this, like I said, this beef and that stems so many years now, they're not involved in it. I don't think so. Even though, Banksy lot, don't go after them.
And you never had a war, because even in your works that directly comment on Banksy's works, you never have someone coming and bringing you a message of warning or something?
Yeah, I've had death threats a lot. It's the thing is, when I called out the fraud at Sotheby's, the falsely dated piece by 12 years, you have to Google JPS burst balloon on Banksy, and you'll see. And this was 2 years ago. And you see on the value site where the line is now dropped, it looks like the Titanic iceberg.
Was it fake Banksy that
was
you identified?
The one that shredded was sold as a 2006. It was painted in 2006, and it had a 2009 COA. Okay? And then it was supposed to have been with a collector for 12 years until auctioned at Sotheby's, when a battery that apparently lasted 12 years, and Banksy shredded it as a protest against street art sales and that. The reality is that piece was painted in that year, in 2018, and I show you a diagram because they release different balloon girls every year, so I could build this big timeline, and there is no picture of that piece prior to 2018. It's a very modern, snazzy balloon girl version, you see. And so is that not fraud? If you're selling something with a falsely dated COA, falsely dated artwork, I mean, the battery, this isn't in the article, the battery inside it was only released after 2013. So that already, just one thing, but I didn't even need to put it in the article. Just the piece alone was enough. And no media will cover what I'm saying. But in over 2 years, I've not had a single response from Banksy's people or Sotheby's, and I've literally pointed right at them and said, you lot are a massive bunch of frauds, you know what I mean? And publicly called them out big time. But no media will cover it. Not any big media, not like the Sun. Well, the Sun isn't a big media, but, Daily Mail, Guardian, CNN, wherever, that no one will touch it. And that's how you realise how many ones they got. Because they cover anything about Banksy usually.
Sure.
As you know.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this fridge moved. Oh, it's been put back. That's how much the media obsess, apparently. But that's because they're paid to obsess. It's just one big crock of shit.
It looks like this. In Argentina, we have this, what we call the real power. It's like the monopolies that also own all the media.
I think it's like in the music industry.
So they have impunity.
Everything.
They can basically do whatever they want, and they don't care, even if you expose. Also, maybe the buyers of this work don't care about it being exposed or not being, because in the end, it will have the value it will have.
The thing is, even though the media wouldn't cover it, I put the article all over the collector forum, you see? And they're all like, oh, JPS is just jealous. But then the next thing you see, oh, I'm selling this Banksy, I'm selling that Banksy. Everyone started selling. And you'll see on the value site, from exactly when I did that move against them, their market, that was the highest point when the article came out, and now it just goes down and down, and it keeps going down, and they keep trying to pump life into it. But the reality is the street art world know they're frauds, That's how it is.
I think they just don't care anymore because they have their business made up already, Even the buyers maybe don't care. It's like a self-feeding system in a way.
I'm not so sure because most are getting past at auction. People aren't buying. I could
show
you.
So it did have an effect.
Oh, massive. I've had a massive effect, but it's like trying to kill Godzilla.
Right.
They're so powerful, man. They're still keep picking peanuts out of shit. They're not going to give up yet. But
yes, David and Goliath street art story.
It is big time like
from
that.
The art market.
Well, sadly, David probably dies in this story.
It's really sad, actually, because we need, I think, sincere, honest artists that really do a criticism, from the margins of the institution.
Yeah.
And Banksy was like a perfect candidate. It was created to be this perfect construct in a way,
Yeah.
But I think we need really honest one, like they're really.
Well, at the end of the day, why hide your identity? They've apparently got so many opinions about world things. Why hide your identity? What, for an £80 street art fine? You don't get you're not going to go for a big jail sentence or anything. There's no reason to hide your identity. But and I kind of view it, if you're going to have all these opinions about war and politics and you're hiding your identity, that makes you a coward. That's like having an opinion on the internet under a false profile. That's how I view it. I think being anonymous in this day and age is pussy.
Definitely not being honest about your production methods and your profit methods.
It's just-
It doesn't go along with being, we have a moral leverage for talking anything politics or social, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the problem in a way. Delegitimizes the word, you know,
Yeah.
or the potential criticism or effect this could have as something that would open your mind, you know. It works in the same way in the end as Mickey Mouse, Disney character works, you know.
Yeah.
Even though it should be a criticism of these characters. Do you think there is still politic in your work?
Sometimes. It's very rare that politics grind my gears that much for me to make a comment on it. Brexit, I made a comment on, you know, but in general, it goes back to believing that I think that street art should just make people enjoy, or sometimes scare the crap out of them. Is my other aim. You know?
Definitely, some of your works are meant to scare.
Yeah. I got to admit, I kind of envied people who got scared by my work because that's my aim. Is I want people to be scared, and people have messaged me like, "Oh, I went to this place, and your Michael Myers scared the absolute crap out of me," and that. But I actually got caught out by my own pieces a couple of times lately. Last year at that hidden gallery with all the horror stuff. I'd paint it in one location. It's like that looks all good, and then you'd go into another part of the factory and you'd be painting. You'll look through the window, and then you'll see through another window and you'll see a face, and you're like, fuck, someone's looking at me. And it's like, no, actually, that's Leatherface. That's my piece. You know? So I ended up getting scared by my own works in the end.
I had a friend who was making one of the best effects artists for horror films in Argentina at the time. And he was giving workshops and making this realistic zombie makeup and so. And he was getting so fucking scared when we were watching a Romero film, you know, like very old zombie film. And he was jumping on the chair, and I was like, man, you are like literally doing this stuff, you know. You're making this zombie makeup, and you're still getting scared every time a zombie appears on screen.
Brilliant.
And this, I read an article on this cat on the chain, where you had I think you made a kind of like a metaphor out of it. Was it right?
With the cat
From your
along the
cat on
chain.
yeah.
There's a story behind that. That was done for Hyundai, for a car company, for a car advert. And basically, I had to come up with a couple of interventions for them. And they sent me a picture of a chain coming out from a wall. And that was during the same brainstorming for this advert is when I came up with the idea for the Go-Go Yubari from Kill Bill with the chain.
Yeah. I love that one.
Yeah, or I had like a knight with it. And that would have been the version I would have preferred. But basically, there was this piece they liked, which was a ballerina on a wall. It was like stuck on with paper, going along a chain. And then like, oh, we want something like that. And I said, well, I'm not biting no one. So I did a cat version. But to be fair, I don't like the piece. A cat can't walk along a chain. But that's what Hyundai wanted to roll with.
But you're a cat person, I know, because I follow you on Facebook.
I do love cats, and that's why I chose a cat, obviously. Right. But at the same time, I had better ideas for that advertisement than what they rolled with. They were kind of trying to fool artists into ripping off ideas that they'd already seen online, and they'd kind of wanted people to paint their similar thing, you know. But yeah, didn't sit comfortable. I can be honest, you know what I mean? People can judge me however they want. I don't care these days.
I think a lot of people love this appropriation of this iconic, like Star Wars, and I was collecting Superman when I was really little.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you made here in Brandenburg, no? Was this barn? You painted with Superman that is
Yeah,
lifting the...
that was a good piece, I got to admit.
It's very
Even though I'm
attractive, I
honest.
think, for a lot of people.
It was the location that helped. You don't often find a nice flat wall with a barn
Right.
on top of it. You know, it's kind of like
The
that's a lot of-
location is key
yeah,
in
yeah.
that
A
kind
lot of
of
times
work.
it's like the Duracell battery, that
Right.
big pillar.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as I seen it, it's like, look at that giant battery. It just looked like a battery even without Duracell on it
Right.
to me. You know, it's like
True.
I thought it was
even the texture of it.
yeah, with that little nipple on the top
Yeah,
and everything.
yeah.
And it took 10 minutes to turn that into a battery. 10 minutes.
It's interesting because there are ways of kind of expanding the stencil into the environment, into the textures of the objects that are laying around. It makes it like come out of the wall in a way.
Yeah, it's always great when you find some weird street fit in that just gives itself away to you, you know. You're like, and then you've got an idea that came out of you from nowhere. There's the old Duracell battery.
Was my favorite film when I was a kid.
It's a good film, isn't it?
With this wizard, what's it called? Yeah, and RoboCop also. Yeah, I love that one. There's this 21, 22, I think it's Pulp Fiction scene, or
Yeah.
a lot of those act already as a meme, like a stencil meme, in a way. How did you find this humor factor? Why did you decide to?
It's because if I couldn't write on even both of these pages the amount of my friends that are dead in that, and we kind of when you're exposed to so much of it, you kind of develop a sense of humor. It's weird, like you kind of get through things with comedy. And my mum's kind of witty as well. She was always very witty with her puns and that. So I think both my parents had this kind of formula. My mum has a very good sense of humour, and my dad was good at art, and somehow their little pot made me.
Were you into like Monty Python or so when you were a kid?
Yeah, and the young ones. I've still got to do...
I don't know.
You don't know the young ones? Brilliant show,
Yeah?
British comedy show, yeah. The young ones, you should look it up.
And what made you get out of Weston and come to Germany?
Well, basically, that's another complex story. I had problems with a stalker in Weston back in 2014, and it resulted in an unlawful arrest by the police. This person made a malicious call, and I was arrested and held for like over 24 hours. I sued the police. It took 4 years, and they had to pay me 10 grand. But that's part of the reason, and obviously, it's difficult because I grew up in such a way that it's difficult to move on from that and be successful if you're going to be knocking around and doing any of your old stuff. You know what I mean? I had to kind of divide myself. I still love my hometown, don't get me wrong. I want to return and paint there. But it was just kind of really for my own mental health. Yeah, for my own mental health. It wasn't good for me being in Weston.
You needed to go out.
Yeah, and obviously I met Steffi PZY and we fell in love, got married, and...
Your lovely wife, who is German.
Yeah. So
from Bavaria.
I was only supposed to come over for 3 weeks. Now I've been here nearly 7 years.
I know these kind of stories.
Yeah. She's a great artist as well.
Usually in Berlin, I didn't hear so many of these stories of staying in Bavaria forever. But
it's tough with street art down there, to be fair. Yeah, because it's like playing Grand Theft Auto painting in Bavaria because of how fast the police are.
So the law enforcement is
There's
more complicated than here in
there's
Berlin.
hardly any crime. The cops are completely bored,
Right.
you know, so they get one, and people don't see street art
All
much.
they have is
Yeah,
graffiti artists to.
they don't
follow.
really even have just under the motorway bridges, you know, tags under bridges. Not really. They don't have any real kind of scene or anything. When old people see you, as soon as you've got a spray can, they phone the police. The police aren't doing anything else.
Or a skateboard, maybe.
Yeah. Police aren't doing anything else, so they're coming straight to you, innit?
And how was it for you, this change of environment? Because it's by the Facebook photos I see, it looks like a place
Paradise.
out of like a film, you know, with
Like a
palace
fairy
and
tale, innit?
like a fairy tale. Yeah,
To
with
be
castles
honest, like in Western, you hear police sirens most days, all day.
More
like,
than here in
Yeah,
Ukraine?
yeah, like you do in New York or Berlin or London. But yeah, police sirens all the time. Where we lived, no police sirens, and it like complete silence in that. And obviously, not as eventful as where I live. You know, just in a week, so many things can happen in Western. It's
Yeah.
just always constantly crazy. It keeps your anxiety level up. But at first, it was kind of a shock to the system, I suppose. I didn't find it that easy, the adjustment at first. Even though I knew that
The
was
cultural shock is.
even
very
though I
big.
knew it was better for me, it was kind of, it was tough to get used to the quietness. But then eventually you learn to embrace it. I got used to it. In fact, I kind of softened, you know what I mean?
But that's good, I think. In comparison to where I come from, Buenos Aires, even here is much more chill, you know?
Yeah.
And also having green areas and being able to go to the...
You'll have to come and visit us. We can collect you if you want.
Good, yeah, would be
Yeah.
nice for sure.
It's really beautiful where we live.
But I can imagine that helps a lot for when you need to like refresh your head, and it really looks like a fucking paradise, you know. It looks like the perfect spot to start something new with a fresh head.
In some ways, it's also difficult because, like, I have a view off my balcony, but it's just trees and fields, which is
That's amazing.
Yeah. But in some ways, for a street artist, that's the worst view in the world because there's no walls. You know, I can't just walk off in the morning and just hit a wall easy. It's a much more complex method of working, but I also like how it kind of influenced my work as well. You know, the Jesus pieces I done, they would never have happened if I didn't move to Bavaria, you know, because we have so many Jesus memorials around the roads.
Right.
Or, you know, the concrete crucifixes, and
Right.
it's covered in religious...
And you were kind of reworking with this...
Yeah, I'm not
kind of-
religious. It's just
Right.
I see them as works of art still. And then, of course, I knew that, okay, everyone loves Jesus here. So if you paint him, they're going to like you. And that worked. So,
Do you come from a punk, so anti-religion, anti-church background?
not so much as that. I went to Sunday school a couple of times when I was a kid,
Okay.
but we just we didn't really have religion rammed down our throats. And I guess it was kind of, like I said, the amount of darkness I've seen in my life, you kind of don't believe there could be a God. You know what I mean? You kind of think there can't be anything with the way the world runs. You know what I mean?
Well, something they have in common is Jesus imaginary with some of your works is that these were figures designed to scare you.
Yeah.
This Jesus with like bleeding and so in the Middle Ages when you go, it's kind of, they were designed to give you this feeling of, at least in part, or that's what I feel, right?
Of guilt, yeah.
Of fear, I think.
Fear and guilt.
Guilt, yeah. Especially guilt. You're a sinner.
Cool stuff.
And now, how is it? How do you organize then your work? Do you have a workshop over there? You come to the city to make graffitis and go back to
your
your house?
Organization-wise, I'm an absolute nightmare. Business-headed-wise, I'm an absolute nightmare as well. So, yeah, I kind of I don't really have a good working system, if I'm honest. I'm kind of a little bit. I'm trying to work on it.
Well, you're an artist. Your excuse for
Kind
not
of been
having.
recently diagnosed with like potentially having ADHD. You know, where you
Welcome to the club.
where you kind of can't focus on things properly. Your mind drifts off, which you probably will notice in this interview sometimes. You'll ask me a question, next thing I'll be talking of something else and never really answer the proper question.
It's okay. This podcast is run by an HDD person. And how do you see your work developing in the future? What are your projects for that? How do you feel your work as an artist will resolve this conflict with the mainstream, let's say, of the art world?
To be honest, I've been very depressed for the last couple of years, really, because I tried to take him out for the blackballing of my career for so many years. I thought if I expose and I've affected them, don't get me wrong, I've really hurt them, but I thought I'd take them down, you know. But this ship is hard to sink, and while it still floats, I'm kind of screwed. And that kind of stopped me doing new pieces at the moment. And it's not because I haven't got any ideas. I have like a book of them. You know, I'm always getting ideas, and then I jot them down in a book. So I've got the ideas, but I feel like if I do them all, and some of them are really good, if I do them all, they're just going to block all the media. So I'm kind of like, okay, so I've been lately not really delivering nothing new, which is a shame because people deserve new work out of me. So.
Definitely. I think you shouldn't be discouraged for
I
this.
think what it was is, you know, it was a hell of a war. Both went at each other. I hurt them. Then just doing so just knocked me on my ass for a long time, you know. But now I'm coming back. And
so they try to cancel
the
you.
strength's coming back, and they're going to get it again soon.
I think, I mean, my feeling in the way, this is also how Banksy, in a way, gained popularity, comes from all this conflict and polemic,
people
and
love
scandal and.
People do like this kind of I mean, everyone always talks about the Banksy Robbo war, you know that.
Yeah.
You know, but to be fair, our war's way more complex and way more nasty than that ever got to. You know, this isn't about scribbling over each other's works like kids. This is.
I can imagine there's a lot of
real, you know.
I can imagine there's a lot of people like you around the world who are also trying to cancel and have independent wars. You know,
there's a few artists that should be, you know, concerned about it. I'm surprised that more street artists haven't tried to speak out, but I can understand their fear. Because I haven't just called out Banksy.
Right.
I've called out the auction houses. So my hopes of these auction houses ever selling JPS in my life, or at least while I'm alive, is not going to happen, and probably not when I'm dead either. You know, it's I didn't just call out the Banksy system. I called out Sotheby's, but people just see one jealous artist, and I didn't list my reasons. Because I didn't want some mile-long article all whining about what they've done to me. I just thought, just keep it simple and just hit them with what they done. But of course, some people just don't want to look because an artist was calling it out. You see, they think, oh, JPS is just jealous. But it was nothing like that, you know.
And you think they care enough to, or have the power to really cancel you or cancel these artists?
I felt the effects of their power for long before I fought back. And whistleblowers from inside their unit telling me exactly what they'd done, and plus knowing from other things, I'd get. Yeah, it's such a long story. Just I know I'd have to go and point out several examples in that and name certain exhibition galleries and stuff. But I won't go into that part. But yeah, their power is astronomically more than I thought. I bit off more than I could chew trying to take them down. But at the same time, they were doing me in anyway, you know.
But you have hopes of an alternative scene could flourish while they're still up there?
I think they're going down eventually, and I'm going to make sure of it. I just need it to recharge.
That's good.
It's
With
not
the
over yet.
Duracell batteries.
They are. They got to go down. I got no choice because I'm not in the game for money. I grew up, and like I said, I've got a lot of dead friends, and we were always told you got three choices. You're going to be in prison, on the dole with kids, like job seekers, or dead.
Yeah.
You're all going to be losers for life. That's what we were kind of taught from a young age.
Wow.
And my aim was just basically to try and become one of the most known and best, and then one day be able to tell their stories as well, and pay tribute to them, and also prove those people that said we'd all turn into nothing, that, some of us can make it, that we can climb out of that hole. So.
What would be your advice for someone who's young now, is also inspired by this kind of expression forms and is thinking about making a career out of it?
Yeah. I'd say if I could go back to the beginning, I would have done a lot of things differently. Do you know what I mean? I was partially responsible because I was a real bad guy. And getting clean overnight doesn't change the fact you swear all the time at that point, Every other word you swear in. Every time someone takes a picture of you, you're flipping the bird. You're just angry. And a lot of my early works were dark. I was flushing out a lot of bad memories. And, yeah, so...
But in the way, that's how you used art expression as a therapy, so to say.
Yeah, I got an incredible buzz off. It wasn't so much about the breaking the law part.
Breaking the law.
It was being able to do like full-size Freddy Kruegers or full-size Robocops, managing to teach myself to do it, and then painting those on a wall is like, and I enjoy my own art basically. That's because I don't paint things. Most of the stuff I paint won't sell. You know what I mean? People don't want horror stuff on their wall and that. But at the same time, to me, it's kind of a therapy, and it's also outside of the box. I'm kind of doing my own thing by that way, I get people who try and emulate me, but I don't get offended by that. It's kind of good. That you can see that you actually made a change on the street art scene and that you influenced others, and I've also known people contact me who'd heard my story about the addiction and the turning it around and how it had helped them do the same, and and all that is some of the best parts of the job. To hear people you made a difference on their life, or when people upload their kid in a little Spider-Man outfit next to your Batman piece, you're like, oh shucks, man. And
brings you joy, this kind of images?
Yeah, my little policy's always been, because I caused a lot of tears in my life, every smile I can create now takes away a tear,
It's treasure.
So to try and balance the scales for a God that doesn't exist. You never know. I might turn up at the scales, innit?
It's interesting. I heard you already say this balance the scales thing. I think art can be very powerful, and of course, no one can tell you how or if to success in the market. No matter if with art or with whatever business.
It's definitely. It doesn't matter how talented you are. You really got to definitely carry yourself right. Because in the early days, I hadn't been on the internet until I used to have to go to the library 1 hour a day in 2009. I was new to the internet, so in the beginning, when you get haters on the internet or whatever, I would respond, and it'd be like, I'd properly respond to them. But then you create people who've got a real fucking...
It takes a lot of breathing.
You create people that got a real axe to grind for you, and they can later cause you problems. So, I do regret that when I was at the beginning still a bit too hot-headed. You know what I mean? I mean, some would say I'm hot-headed now, but I don't think so.
So your message would be keep it cool in a way.
Yeah, try and keep it cool and yeah, I mean, envy and stuff like that. We're all susceptible to that, you know. It's just a natural thing, but you have to control that kind of thing and just yeah, it's very much about how you carry yourself. But I just was in an unfortunate chain of events that caused me to be a target by the Banksy crew, and that's been a very big problem for my career. You know, if I wanted to just stay at a small level, then yeah, but it wasn't my aim. I wanted people to around the world to see my works, and they do the best they can to try and turn that down, you know, to stop it being covered in and stop me getting invites to any events, and any door I open, if they know they've got someone inside it, they'll make calls and
That's crazy.
bang, yeah.
It's crazy that they really dedicate structured
bunch
time and work.
of cowardly assholes, man. They've never had the minerals to even just message me and say, let's discuss it or anything. They're just too pussy, you know. They grew up in a completely different world to me, and they were never going to accept me anyway, you know, because they grew up rich and they look down on people, and
That's what's threatening, I think, for this construct they are profiting from.
Yeah.
They don't have an honest origin story
No.
for this kind of work.
It's just got ridiculous at this point. You know, we live in a day and age where you cannot be anonymous. There has to be another reason. I knew this. I had enough loaf right at the beginning to know that if I tried to play the anonymous name card, that even one of my mates would have sold my name off to the media. You know, no one. Yeah, it's a fact. Just like happened to Banksy. Well, the original first one before he pulled his pants
They
down.
say they went to Cunningham's father when they were vacationing or something, and that he was giggling and saying, "I cannot help you with that," but like they were expecting this kind of question. So I guess it is hard to keep, but still, with the Banksy collective project, I don't know how to name it, they were kind of very successful at creating an ever-escaping figure, you know, identity-wise.
Yeah. They're good at. Well, if you've got the money behind it, you can do anything, you know.
Right.
I guarantee if I had their sort of money, I would knock them out of the ballpark.
But I think the best strategy for you is to keep being yourself and to keep developing your identity.
Yeah, this is the thing.
And your presence.
I let this war eat me up, you know, and it did. It swallowed me. And I'm now kind of in a different mindset. You know, I've accepted that, okay, you're probably fucked when it comes to your main aim in life here. And that, but at the same time, you love doing what you do. And you really enjoyed it, so you need to get yourself back, you know, and that's what I'm
yeah,
doing.
I mean, it's a kind of like a curse, but also should make you stronger. You have to deal with this kind of complicated relationship.
Yeah, I mean, before I went through just day after day where I'd wake up and then the first thing I think of is, you know, you ain't getting nowhere. They're just going to shut every door you open. It's no point in painting anything. It's not going to get shared by any of the street art pages. It's not going to get any love from the established. It get love from people, but that doesn't pay the bills or anything. It's not that I'm in it for money, but you know what I mean. I also want my work to get its exposure it deserves, but it gets blocked. You know?
What would you hope it happens? Being optimistic.
I've started to really believe in myself again, and I'm just gonna get up again and just go at it, you know. I've got a few more pieces where I can make commentary. If they're going to block me going saying anything in the media about them, I'll say it on walls.
Let's go at it then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie, for being here.
Okay.
We will leave your links for your social media. We have a very popular Instagram account in the description of the video. Everything else you want. And we continue next encounter with future scandals and works and projects and exhibitions.
I could tell you just quickly. We've been at Teufelsberg yesterday. This is why I still got loads of paint on my fingers.
Yeah.
In case anyone's thinking I got pickpockety hands.
Because a street artist.
It's So yesterday we hit 7 pieces at Teufelsberg, and tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday is going to be more at Teufelsberg. Then we go back to Bavaria, and
Teufelsberg, I've never been, but I know it's a touristic point.
oh, you
here.
need to go there. It's an absolute mecca for street art. It's incredible. You've got artists from everywhere there, and it's
But it's
covered.
an abandoned building,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You need to go there, man.
Can you believe it? 12 years I live here.
All right. Well, we'll talk about this after the interview.
Yes, we talk about in our second round.
You usually got to walk up a great big hill, but we can drive the car right in there. We even drive around it to paint. You know?
Thank you very much for coming here again.
Oh yeah. Also,
Yeah.
back in Lower Franconia, Spessart area, we have a lot more pieces planned for the area.
Ah, right. Yeah, please name which exhibitions you have current or...
Yeah. Also, I've got a lot of works. I think I got about 50 pieces in Neuwied. I think that's how it's pronounced. Stadtgalerie in Neuwied.
Okay.
It's called Sons and Daughters of Street Art, the show. And we've got, I think, 500 pieces of work in total. You've got like Otto Schad, Al Bocco, you know Al Bocco, I expect, and Blek Loret's in, Banksy's in there as well. I didn't have any control on that fact. Sadly, I can't shut doors on there.
You make me joke with the words.
Sorry, man.
Excellent. We will leave the links for all the exhibitions and your works, and we see us next time. Thank you everyone for listening, and see us in the future. Bye.
Nice one. Nice one, man.
If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to give us a like and a comment under the video. If you want to see more, click here, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.